Welcome to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin.
Stephon Gilmore go to the Patriots. Now they let Mike Gillislee go to the Patriots. Are they now just the farm club within their own division?
Greg.
He's one of these faux leading women. It's like, that's not Angelina Jolie or Jennifer Aniston. It's some girl that I would see at the Circle K. That's kind of Alshon Jeffrey.
And Ryan.
There is absolutely no reason why O.J. Howard should be drafted before Cameron Brate. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Scaldred. With me tonight is my brother Justin, and we want to thank everyone who is on listening on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and for those of you who are watching this the day that it actually airs, the replay airs on YouTube, or listening to it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, whatever atmosphere you use to hear our show. We want to thank you for joining in tonight or today. Real quick, before we get started, we want to go ahead and say that we would love for you to do a quick review or rating of our show, whether it be on, again, Instagram or iTunes or Stitcher. We really could use the help, I guess you could say. We would love to know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. So if you could give us a little rating or review, that would be greatly appreciated. We will. I'm sure some of you are probably wondering why we haven't announced the winners of the giveaway. I am still collecting those. Like I said earlier, a couple days ago, I am still in the process of a career change, and working on getting a whole bunch of stuff taken care of for that. We will have those names put together, and probably the Wednesday night show will actually make that announcement on who won the signed Jay Ajayi jersey, the signed Martavis Bryant jersey, and I think the top winner would be the third place guy who actually gets a Skull King t-shirt. So, wouldn't you agree, Justin?
I would agree. I would definitely agree.
Too bad we can't sign it before we send it out to him. Make it just absolutely priceless.
Yeah, next year.
All right. Well, so why don't we go ahead and dive in? Tonight's show, we are going to cover a little bit of news and notes. We got some injury news that's being updated. We are also going to cover a little bit of the Monday night games. The currently the Chargers and Broncos are still going, but it looks like the Broncos are kind of running away with it with an unexpected hero.
Well, Denver's playing. I don't know if San Diego's playing. Or, I mean, Los Angeles. How many times is that going to happen?
It's going to happen all season. Maybe even for a couple seasons.
Maybe.
So, all right. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the news and notes? Then we'll cover the games from tonight, and then we'll hit up the waiver wires so you guys can make sure to get those waiver claims in and ready for Wednesday morning. And here we go. Let's see. Well, we'll just start from the top, work our way backwards. Here we go. Coach Pete Carroll said that Tyler Lockett will get more snaps at receiver in Week 2 against the 49ers. He didn't get a whole lot in this past game, but not that it matters because really they can't. The offensive line can't stop anyone, so it's not like Russell Wilson's going to have a whole lot of time to be able to throw the ball to Tyler Lockett or Doug Baldwin or Jimmy Graham or anyone else. One comment I will make, the one thing that seemed to help them out in their offense was the hurry up offense. They actually seemed to move the ball pretty well when they did that. When they gave the defense time to set and get ready for what was coming. Yeah, that didn't work out so well for them. But I think that if they were in a hurry-up offense, I think that could help them out a little bit, and just to keep the defense from being able to be as prepared. So,
yeah, I think just to touch on that one really fast, Seahawks do play the 49ers this next week, who got stomped by Carolina, regardless of what the score says. even though Carolina didn't put up 40 points like the Chiefs, the 49ers are just playing bad this year. So I look for a huge bounce back performance from your Seattle players in the coming week.
All right. Also, part of the Seahawks, coach Pete Carroll says that Thomas Rawls will play in Week 2 against the 49ers. Still, Chris Carson I still think, will be mixed in there. Eddie Lacy will not. I mean, he'll get some carries. I'm just not seeing that of Eddie Lacy. It didn't help that the offensive line wasn't able to create for him. But we talked about this last night, that though the offensive line couldn't create a whole lot of holes for the running backs, Chris Carson was still able to make something happen, enough to at least get past the line of scrimmage. When Eddie Lacy has like 5 carries for 4 yards, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So, Coach Chuck Pagano of the Colts has ruled Andrew Luck out for Sunday's game against the Cardinals. Will be a few more weeks. So make sure to stream the Cardinals defense for this week, and you should be in good shape.
A lot of teams probably still already have, or a lot of leagues, I should say, already have the Cardinals defense. So I wouldn't necessarily say streamable, but for all seriousness, if they're available, grab them
and play them.
Because the Rams were okay last year, not very fantasy relevant, but they just, Tolzien just gave them 14 points.
Yeah.
And so one thing on Luck, I don't see Luck coming back until probably week 5 against the 49ers. They're not going to bring him back for the first game against the Seahawks. And if he hasn't even started to throw the ball, that doesn't really bode well for week 3 against the Browns, which might be the easiest warm-up game. Second to the 49ers the week after the Seahawks. So
even the Browns played the Steelers pretty tough in Cleveland. So the score wasn't as close as the actual score said it was.
Yeah.
But the fact that their defense was able to hold to hold the line pretty well, it's not going to the Colts aren't going, or the Browns aren't going to be just a pushover either. So
no.
Arizona Cardinals are making a running back move. Source said they are signing they signed Patriots running back DJ Foster off of New England's practice squad. This is because the Arizona Cardinals have announced that David Johnson's initial prognosis on his wrist is that it's dislocated. Has the same prognosis as TJ Logan on the Cardinals, who is out for 12 weeks. His wrist, DJ's wrist, also could require surgery. So it is nothing but bad news for the Cardinals.
It's rough.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's rough.
On top of that, to the Cardinals, it also looks like that they could possibly bring in Chris Johnson. And there's a few.
DJ2K might be coming back.
Yeah, there's also there's been rumors of a couple other people. So I want to say, who was the guy that was backing up Le'Veon Bell for a couple years? D'Angelo Williams is a name that's come up.
That one's probably the most interesting one of the names that have been thrown out there.
Because he's filled in that specific role in the last couple of years behind Le'Veon Bell.
And CJ2K is more like CJAOL.com at this point. There is no speed. You're at dial-up at this point.
Wow. Speaking Monday today, Browns coach Hugh Jackson would not commit to Kenny Britt as a Week 2 starter after his horrific drop in the game. Good sign for Corey Coleman and Duke Johnson owners. After Duke Johnson was targeted 4 times, only had 2 catches for like 5-10 yards or something like that, or maybe it was 2 catches for 20 yards. Yeah, something
it wasn't
that.
much. It was like 4 points.
Yeah, 4 or 5 points depending on your scoring. Duke Johnson is currently listed behind Britt as the backup wide receiver too. So Duke Johnson could now become a wide receiver, not just their slot guy.
Okay, not going to happen. I think this is more get your butt in gear kind of language as opposed to, I mean, it was a horrific drop. I mean, we mentioned it last night. It was Ted Ginn style of a drop. But they signed him to a very good contract in the offseason. They're not going to, after one bad turnout, just drop everybody or drop using Kenny Britt's versatility after week one. This is a very, very good thing to note for those of you who had a bad week one in fantasy. This is not the time to just shake everything to pieces and start grabbing waiver wire claims. I still am a believer in Kenny Britt. This was a bad week. There will be some growing pains, but I still believe Kenny Britt is a solid fantasy flex player throughout the season.
Do you think that Cason Williams could get a shot because of this? After he got signed, because he got signed by the Browns after the Seahawks released him at the end of preseason.
Not this early. I should say when the Browns officially give up on this season. Yes, that is the time that Cason Williams will make a more notable appearance. But it's still too early. There's still too much optimism. I mean, they didn't play as bad as Cincinnati. So the Browns season isn't done yet.
Yet. All right. All right. Let me come more. Here we go. Bill O'Brien said that Deontay Foreman will get increased carries going forward. Let me see real quick. Let me actually pull his stats up.
He had one rush
for
4 yards.
One rush for 4 yards. And what did Miller do in that game?
17 rushes for 65. So once again, Lamar Miller is getting a lot of touches and less than 4 yards per carry. So not a lot of production for the amount of touches he's getting used. He is still very valuable in the passing game, but I just don't know how much he's going to be able to take pounding the rock up the middle.
All right. Then let's move on to he's one of those guys that I think Deontay Foreman is one of those guys that if you have room on your bench to stash a guy, he's one to look at.
You're gonna need a deep bench.
Well, again, if you have room, some benches, especially on like in a 12 to 14 team league where you've got 5 to 6, you got 6 to 7 bench spots in some of those leagues. That may be a league if he is not picked up already. That would be a league to hey, just kind of hold on to him for later.
Yeah.
Let's see. The Baltimore Sun's Jeff Zerbiak reports that the Ravens fear Danny Woodhead will miss a, quote, significant amount of time. That's pretty much what I was expecting out of Danny Woodhead this year after, tearing up his leg again last year. So,
well, I was on the fence. Obviously, the injuries were a concern. I thought that they would come up, but not this hard, this early, and this fast. I mean, he had, 3 touches, and then he was carted?
Yeah, 3. I think it was 3 catches was what he had, and then that was it. So, yeah.
Cue Buck Allen.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. Let me see what else. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports that the Texans are expected to start Deshaun Watson on Thursday night against the Bengals. Why not? The Bengals looked like crap against the Ravens, so why not go ahead and see what the kid can do? I don't think we necessarily expected it to happen this early. I think we probably put the over under like game 4, game 5. Half a game. That's all it took. So we'll see what Deshaun Watson can do with the opportunity. And I believe
he was one of Ian's deep sleepers.
Deep sleepers, yeah.
Not so deep anymore.
No. All right.
Still only a quarterback that I would pick on a bye week for your starter.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a two quarterback team, where you actually start two quarterbacks, or a super flex, he's a guy that could be an interesting option depending on the week and the matchup. So,
yeah.
I think that's it. That's it for the news and notes. There wasn't a whole lot. Mainly, the main things. Oh, the NFL has officially appealed the Zeke Elliott injunction. So we'll see what that actually. Here's what this means. The NFL is asking the court to overturn the injunction and allow the suspension to stand while the court case plays out. In order to get it overturned, they must prove that the judge that issued the injunction was not following the law in regards to at least one of the four prongs which led to the injunction being granted. So we're still waiting. Still more drama.
What's funny is if the injunction is approved, let me figure out how to word this correctly. So basically, if the injunction filed by the NFL goes against Elliott, what's funny is it will play out while the court case is being heard, which will take many weeks. Therefore, the court case could happen to where Ezekiel Elliott is exonerated from anything, yet he still gets suspended for 6 weeks.
Correct.
So, welcome to the drama that is the NFL currently. Apparently, we did not get enough with the Deflategate. Now we have to have Beardgate, I guess, is what we'll call this one, to avoid any sort of Freudian slips about domestic violence and those kinds of things. But yeah, I'm going to call this one Beardgate
or Bellygate, considering
Bellygate. Yeah.
Him always, lifting his shirt up. So, and then, we announced last night that Allen Robinson's out for the season. So,
we did announce Kevin White done for the year, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Want to make sure.
Yep, the new Mr. Glass. So,
yes, the new Mr. Glass.
I think that's all we've got. So, all right. So, done with the news and notes. Let's talk a little bit about the game, the first game, the New Orleans Saints getting beat in Minnesota. How good did Sam Bradford look? Now, let's be honest, that the New Orleans defense is young and bad.
Yeah.
But Bradford, let's be honest, Bradford looked pretty sharp.
I would contend that Bradford had the best quarterback day of the week. And here's why. Granted, he didn't get the 4 touchdowns that Stafford had. He had just under the yards that Alex Smith had, but Alex Smith did it with a 78 and a 75-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah.
Bradford just picked apart. I mean, some of these passes were literally threaded perfectly. Now, arguments could be said that they were threaded perfectly because it was horrible defense, and if you play a quality defense, those balls get batted away. Even so, you only have to play the team you're currently playing. And what I saw tonight was a tremendous amount of chemistry between Bradford and Thielen, Bradford and Diggs. Rudolph was not as involved as a lot of people would have expected. He did get a touchdown
until the red zone. That's where he's going to have his value.
3 catches, 3 targets, 26 yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
I would have expected more out of last year's number 5, and especially after everyone else in the tight end category kind of
pooped the bed.
Kyle Storm reference. Sorry. But yeah, it's just I think Bradford did an amazing job tonight.
Yeah, I think honestly, I had Thielen picked as a good pick for tonight. I didn't know what to expect out of Diggs, simply because Diggs struggled a bit in the preseason. He had a lot of I saw a few times where he had balls right in his hands that dropped, not even in traffic. Just lack of focus. He definitely showed the focus tonight. God, what did he have? Like six catches? Or let's see, where was it?
7 catches, 8 targets, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns.
There it was. And then Thielen, I knew that Thielen was going to get targeted a lot. 9 catches for 157 yards.
Are you bold enough to say that you think Thielen, and I think I already know the answer to this question, are you bold enough to say that you think Thielen will outscore Diggs this year?
No.
Okay.
I think it would be close, but I think that Thielen was able to take advantage of matchups a little better. But when it came to the red zone, he was looking for Rudolph and Diggs. Those were so. I think honestly, think of it this way, kind of like how Kirk Cousins uses, say, like a Jamison Crowder between the 20s.
Yep.
Get down the field. When he gets near the end zone, he uses the bigger bodies. Jordan Reed, or if Jordan Reed's out, a Vernon Davis.
Yeah.
He looks that direction. So.
Yeah. Okay. Dalvin Cook, great performance tonight as well.
Yes.
Ironically, with Adrian Peterson in the building, broke the record for rookie rush yards in a season opener for the Minnesota Vikings. And realistically, on the flip side, the Saints looked bad. Committed too much to the run, in my opinion, did not use Peterson or Ingram effectively, and Alvin Kamara ended up with more touches than the other two. Are you concerned? Obviously, we were not high on Ingram or Peterson, but are you concerned for those that took Peterson and Ingram in how things will play out over the next couple of weeks?
I'm concerned that anyone took Peterson when we kept saying, don't do it. Father Time has already run over him. So, I mean, if you went ahead and took Peterson anyways and then started him, well, okay. Then moving on to Ingram. Ingram had a decent year last year. However, we all know that for some reason, Sean Payton doesn't really seem to like him. Sean Payton really likes Alvin Kamara. Yep. Alvin Kamara led the Saints running backs in snaps. He led them in touches. He led them in rush yards. Now, that's not saying a whole lot because
18 yards
was it. But Mark Ingram, 6 rushes for 17 yards. Adrian Peterson, 6 for 18. Kamara, 7 for 18. And then Kamara had 4 catches for 20 yards. And, I think that Kamara could have gotten more, but the Vikings defense, they are beasts. Yep. They were not leaving any room for anyone to get moving. So I am fine to I would definitely look at Kamara as a stash. They obviously want to get him involved. It'll be interesting to see how it goes next week at home for the Saints against the Patriots. With the Patriots just coming off a bad game. Really
quickly to stay on this game, to talk about one more player. Your thoughts on Coby Fleener now being utilized a little bit more? A lot of people believe that is because Snead is out for three games. He was second in the team in targets. Thomas had 8. Fleener and Kamara both had 6. Fleener did get 5 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. It looks like he's being used more. Do you see him as a waiver wire pickup? A lot of people streamed him because of like a Cameron Brate being out. Do you see him as something of a more long-term solution, even with Snead coming back, or do you think it disappears?
I think he disappears, especially next week. I mean, I understand they're at home, but New England was able to make Travis Kelce disappear. So what's Coby Fleener going to do to him?
So, yeah, we'll talk about that in matchups later this week, but I think you'll see a much bigger game from a Michael Thomas against the Patriots this next week.
Correct. And possibly an Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
If you look,
he won't have a Hunt.
He won't have a Kareem Hunt type of game, but
but you'll see a young, versatile back, I think, coming out of the backfield.
Also lining up in the slot, which he did a couple times tonight.
Yeah, as long as, what's his name? The defensive end, formerly from Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
As long as he's not covering Kamara, they should be fine.
They should be fine. All right, yeah, that's all I had really from that game. What's I can't have the game right in front of me for the
it's kind of an update from the game. It's with 11 minutes to go. It's 24-7.
Okay.
Trevor Siemian just threw an interception intended for Benny Fowler, who apparently has been a popular target in the red zone only, with 3 catches, 21 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Really a running game for most of it. When we look at Trevor Siemian, currently 16 for 26, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Anderson has 71 yards. Trevor Siemian does have 3 total touchdowns because he did run 1 in.
Correct.
But Demaryius Thomas, 5 catches, 67 yards. Really not a big surprise. I think on the flip side, Phillip Rivers only throwing for 89 total yards so far is very underwhelming. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The touchdown obviously going to Melvin Gordon early. But Williams, 3 catches, 32 yards, and Allen, 3 catches, 6 targets, but only 22 yards. So unless your name is Gordon, Allen, or Williams in the passing game, neither Gates, Oliver, or Benjamin really have anything to contribute tonight. Benjamin at least has a catch, 6 yards, but Gates, Oliver, and Hunter Henry have all basically just disappeared.
Well, I think for tonight's game, that's probably mostly because of just how phenomenal Denver's defense is, especially against the pass.
Yes.
I mean, but then we go back to Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon is rushing for less than 3 yards a carry, which, again, we kind of expect out of Melvin Gordon. Greg had him picked as a bust this year. And really the only thing that's saving Gordon's night right now is that touchdown. So
yeah. 3.2 yards right now is not good. I think this has a lot to do with just how good the Denver defense is.
Yeah.
Be wary with your players as the season progresses, going up against a defense with someone like a Travis Kelce, who's going to have to play him twice. Kareem Hunt's going to have to play him twice. Derek Carr is going to have to play him twice. It's just one of those things you're going to have to be very, very wary of going up against the Denver defense this year, who in the first week is really looking like the best defense in the league.
Yeah, I like Tyrell Williams to have a good year this year, but I sat him for in every league that I have him for tonight's game, knowing he was not going to get a whole lot against Denver, because last year I think he totaled in the 2 games like 50 yards, 40 yards or something like that with 4 catches. So Phillip Rivers will bounce back. Tyrell Williams will bounce back as well. Again, this is in Denver, so I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of him. So really, I don't have a whole lot. I think C.J. Anderson's obviously having a good game running the ball. So he's, if you picked him up late, that seems, at least for now, to be an okay value. They haven't really used him in the red zone much. Really, it's just to get down to the red zone and then throwing
red zone. They're going with
Fowler.
Small Charles right now.
Yeah, so
with the running, he had a couple of runs when it was 1st and goal, very, very short, couldn't get in, but has 8 carries for 32 yards, which isn't bad, but really only prevalent in standard, and even at that, he's not. That's 3 points. That's not much.
Yep. All right. So yeah, that pretty much covers tonight's game as well. So. Yep.
And then now we get into waiver wires, who to grab, who not to grab.
Yeah. So just why don't we start with, we'll just start with the QB.
For this week, We just talked about him. I think if you're looking to grab quarterback depth, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, or you had Andy Dalton and you're just that upset, I wouldn't get rid of Andy Dalton yet, but if you want to look at having a second quarterback as an option, Sam Bradford, currently only owned in 11% of leagues, really looked like the number 1 overall draft pick that he was when he got drafted in facing the Saints. Yes, the Saints are not the best defense, but has really a lot of talent around him in Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph and Dalvin Cook.
It's solid running game, yeah.
Passing game, solid passing game. If I'm Peterson, just to touch on this really fast, if I'm Peterson, I'm a little upset because they couldn't block like that last year.
Well, I don't know if you know the 5 offensive linemen that they had starting tonight for the Minnesota Vikings did not actually, none of them, this was a completely different combination than what they had played with in any of the preseason games.
Yep.
This was the first time that all 5 of them had been playing in a game all together at the same time. They'd only been doing it in practice.
Yeah, and I think they're pretty good.
It looked pretty solid, at least tonight against a New Orleans Saints defense that has struggled the last few years. So,
yeah. Do we want to cover the ones I don't like in this scenario as well, or do we just want to go through who you should look at and then we'll cover who you should avoid?
I think why don't we just stick with the quarterbacks? Is there? I mean, for the main is a quarterback, possibly 2 that you'd say that is not worth it.
Simeon, if he continues to score, I'm very nervous about. Just because, I mean, right now he's got 21 points, 10 minutes left in the 4th quarter. He did just throw a pick. He does have quality receivers. I don't see him being a consistent fantasy production of what you would want in a quarterback 1.
No,
I just don't see it.
I think he's a matchup-based quarterback in a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, and no one would have started him tonight, and
No.
I don't think anyone did start him tonight.
No.
I think when I look at him, to pull him up really quick, he's only owned in 4.3% of leagues according to ESPN. So
Yeah.
There's a reason why you didn't draft him. Keep him there.
Yep.
The other one I would avoid is currently owned in 29% of leagues, and that's Alex Smith. And I touched on it a little bit. If you take away, obviously, the plays happened. And people say if you take away the 2 biggest plays, that obviously makes him average. But not this quite average. I mean, if you take away the 2 biggest passes to Hunt and to Hill, Smith only has 215 yards. 215 yards. The Patriots defense did have some unfortunate injuries in the game, which forced them to play brand new players to their defense that they had acquired that week. There's not a whole lot of the defensive playbook that you could have utilized, which is then when the Chiefs just steamrolled the Patriots. That's when they scored 28 of their 42 points is in the second half. And so, yes, Alex Smith had a career day, but there's a reason why you didn't draft him. Until he does it again for a second time, continue to leave him on waivers or leave him as a streaming quarterback when your starter
Correct.
goes down.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes Alex Smith as valuable as he is the fact that he is a sneaky ball runner. That he can get the yards running that you don't necessarily expect out of him. He tends to be...
Hang on, just update. Chargers just did score a touchdown, 5-yard touchdown pass to Keenan Allen.
All right. Well,
24-14, 8 minutes to go.
Okay, so they're trying to make a little bit of a comeback here. Thanks for the update. So yeah, I think that Alex Smith is a 2-quarterback type of guy. That when he has games like this, you're ecstatic, but you're expecting you basically take him as a waiver wire pickup or as a streaming starter because you expect about 220 to 240 in passing yards and 1, maybe 2 touchdowns. That's and not give up the ball. That's Alex Smith. So Moving on. So let's go on to. Whoops. Let me pull. Sorry, moving over. Let's go to wide receivers.
Wide receivers. In 3 of my leagues, this guy is not. In 3 of my 4 leagues, this guy's not available because he's already on my team.
Must be Kenny Golladay.
This is Kenny Golladay, currently owned in only 10% of leagues, according to ESPN. Golladay came in
19% on Yahoo.
19% on Yahoo. Golladay came in with a lot of preseason hype. Once again, we referenced how after his 2-touchdown game in preseason,
you don't understand.
Blew up.
He's the GOAT.
He became
Greatest of
the
all
GOAT.
time.
He became the GOAT without ever playing an actual NFL game. There was concerns about him getting out-snapped by T.J. Jones going into the game, and based off how the wide receivers would match up around, there was fear that he could get matched with Peterson a lot and get shut down because he did struggle in the last 2 preseason games against some quality corners, and thought that would continue to translate into the regular season. It didn't actually happen. He did only get 4 catches, 2 of which were touchdowns. One was a beautiful pass over the middle, diving catch.
45-yard touchdown, yeah.
Yeah, 45-yard touchdown, very athletic catch. He did get more targets than Marvin Jones, who was drafted way ahead of him and is owned in almost every league.
Yeah.
A lot of people still believe that Marvin Jones could produce what he did in Cincinnati and maybe do what he did at the beginning of last year. The trend over the last 10 games is not that. And though Marvin Jones is hyped more, Marvin Jones will continue to disappear much like he did last year when Bolden, a bigger-bodied receiver and more athletic receiver, emerged because of size. Golladay will continue to do the same throughout the year. Obviously, won't have a lot of 2-touchdown games, but I see him more involved and more productive than a Marvin Jones throughout the rest of the season.
All right. I agree with you there. I really like Kenny Golladay. I have him in a 12-team league. I didn't pick him up in a 10-team. I wasn't expecting this much. I figured I could kind of hold off on him. Now I have no choice but to try to pick him up on waivers, just because I think that he's going to be a solid guy, especially to be used in the red zone. How many targets? He had 7 targets,
yep,
which is 4 more than Eric Ebron did. And everyone was expecting Eric Ebron to be a monster in the red zone this year, and it's just not happening. So
yeah, we're talking about the number 2 receiver on a pass-first offense. That alone, regardless of team, regardless of names, a number 2 receiver on a pass-first offense is fantasy relevant because of targets.
Yep. So, all right. Let me see here. All right. Yeah, he's the main guy that I have. I mean, looking at everyone else that is available, there's not really anyone that's really shown anything yet.
I do have one more.
You have one more to pick up.
From a wide receiver perspective, I like Cooper Kupp. Now, we've talked about him not being the most athletic specimen on the field, but clean route runner, dependable to catch the ball, and the fact that Sean McVay is once again, a pass-first offensive type of guy with over 4,000 yards passing in the last 2 seasons with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback in Washington as the offensive coordinator there. He knows how to develop talent. Jared Goff looked like a very good quarterback for the first time ever in his short career, being drafted at the beginning of last season. Kupp led the team in catches, targets, yards, and was the only receiver with a TD. I think Kupp will continue to be a great player through PPR leagues, especially in the underneath routes. And it looks like Denver has just fumbled, and the Chargers now have the ball. Apparently the Chargers have decided to play.
Jamal Charles fumbled. All right,
yep.
So this game's getting closer. All right, well, okay. Sorry, I realized that I was trying to figure out why don't I have Cooper Kupp on here? It's because I was still looking at only available players instead of all players in the league. I already have Cooper Kupp in the one league that he would have been available. So, All right, so those are, I think Galladay and Cup. I have Cup in one league. I have Galladay in another. I mean, I'm going to be all over trying to get Galladay in the one league that I don't have him in. So, guys that may look like they're going to produce, but I'd stay away from. For me, either one of the Jacksonville receivers, Allen Hurns and Marquise Lee. I think you need to hold off on them just because with Allen Robinson going out, one of them has to step up, but you don't know which one it's going to be. And two, they're just going to run the ball with Fournette. Fournette had a phenomenal game and showed to be an absolute beast. So I think they're going to stick with that and use their young, speedy defense. And so I think that for me, avoid the Jacksonville Jaguars receivers for now until you can figure out how that's going to sort out. So
you mean to tell me they're not going to trust Blake Bortles carrying it out?
And so that's
fantasy news right there.
Yeah. So that's about all I have.
I have another wide receiver that individuals should avoid, and it's borderline because most people should pay attention enough to know to avoid this person to begin with. But Nelson Aguilar was one of the top receivers this week in fantasy. Granted, this was a down week across the board from wide receiver production perspective.
Yeah.
But if you take away his one big catch of 58 yards, which was his TD, he only has 5 catches for 28 yards. He's an underneath route guy. He was only relevant because of a lucky, or I should say an unfortunate missed tackle that then he continued, and a blown assignment, which then he continued to convert into a touchdown. It was still more targets than Alshon Jeffrey, which we've all talked about not necessarily being a big fan of Alshon Jeffrey,
Yep.
Who only had 3 catches and 38 yards. But look for Wentz to develop more chemistry and reliability with his veteran receivers like a Jeffries or Torrey Smith, and rely heavily on the tight end. I think this is an outlier, and really only you only know about it because it's week 1.
Yep.
So, and the Chargers have just scored and made it 24-21.
Who got this one? Travis Benjamin.
Travis Benjamin does get the touchdown.
All right.
So, Phillip Rivers now has 3 touchdowns and 166 yards.
And with only, how much? 7 minutes to play, they're only down by 3 now. So
that's a very, very quick turnaround on score.
All right. Moving on, we've gone through wide receivers. Let's hit up the running backs. Okay. So the guys, we've already talked about the guys that we want. We want Tariq Cohen, which we talked about last night.
Yep.
And I think one of the things to think about with Tariq Cohen is I don't necessarily see this as an outlier because who do they have at wide receiver now? It's Kendall Wright. It's Marcus Wheaton, who I believe is actually injured right now.
Yes.
And I don't even know who else. I can't even think of who else they have now with Kevin White and Cameron Meredith out. I don't even know who their wide receivers are at this point now. So you've got Tariq Cohen to catch the ball out of the backfield. You have Jordan Howard, who is a beastly runner. He's a beastly runner. He is going to get his carries. But last year, I want to say that he actually had the most drops, or the highest drop percentage of running backs with catches out of the backfield, with targets out of the backfield. And so that was one of the things that really was not not downplayed enough, or not played up enough with him. And so Tariq Cohen, whose nickname in college was the Human Joystick, just with his ability
one of the best names ever.
with his ability to move and get away and evade defenders. So if you can pick up Tariq Cohen, he is going to be involved in the passing game. Plus, he's also going to run the ball, and he has the ability to break off these massive runs. 5 attempts for 66 yards in this last game. So Tariq Cohen is definitely a guy you want to target. tonight, not necessarily based off overall performance, but based off of usage that he is getting, I'm going after Alvin Kamara in leagues where I have the space.
Yeah.
To stash away for later, because again, we've talked about how much Sean Payton for some reason doesn't like Mark Ingram, and Mark Ingram last year had his I want to say his first 1,000-yard rushing season. Are you looking that up?
Who are you saying? I was looking up something else.
Sorry, Mark Ingram. Because Mark Ingram last year, I know he had 1,000 rushing yards, but he also had like 4 or 5 games where he had less than 5 carries last year. And
he had 1,000 yards last year.
And they kept giving the ball to. Well, I know he had 1,000. I just don't know if it was his only 1,000-yard season.
It was.
Okay. So he had a pretty decent year last year, and yet still Sean Payton for some reason doesn't like using him. I don't know if he's had a little trouble with fumbles here and there, but Sean Payton is in love with Alvin Kamara. He is actually compared Alvin Kamara to Marshall Faulk from The Greatest Show on Turf. So he wants to use Alvin Kamara. So I'm picking him up because pass-catching running backs, for the most part, have a whole lot of value in Sean Payton's offense. And so he's a guy that I want to at least hold on to see what he can do. Plus, if you have return yards leagues, he does return kicks. He returns kickoffs. So, plus he also lines up in the slot as a slot receiver. So,
question for you.
Yes.
And I think I know where you're going to go, but just give context for where other players can see the value. Do you like Alvin Kamara or Derrick Henry?
Alvin Kamara, because he's getting regular usage.
Is it close? Well, Henry got 6 carries for 25 yards against the Raiders, and DeMarco Murray struggled running the ball, almost on a Melvin Gordon status.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, DeMarco Murray has a whole lot of wear on those tires, so it could be that. Again, from a PPR perspective, I like Alvin Kamara.
Right.
If you're in a standard league, I'd probably be looking more at Derrick Henry. But from a PPR perspective, and for a guy that plays in PPR leagues that have return yard scoring, I'm looking at Alvin Kamara. So,
yep.
Anyone else that you want to look at or not want to look at?
I've got 2. Marlon Mack for the Colts. Currently owned in 3% of leagues. Once again, we've talked about how Father Time's going to catch up with Frank Gore. In the opening game of the season, they split carries, both with 10. Mack got the TD, but he also had a fumble. We've already talked about him being a player to stash late. I think he's an option. There's going to be a lot of people looking for replacements for a David Johnson, and there's going to be other people who just want to try and stash running back depth. So this gives you a couple of options to go after if you can't get the number 1 pick like a Tariq Cohen or an Alvin Kamara. And then Kerwin Williams kind of as I don't want to say a last option, but he's an option. Everyone out there, like I said, all David Johnson owners need to target a running back. That could be Williams because, number 1, he's going up against the Colts next week, who are atrocious.
Yeah.
Who made Todd Gurley fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
And it's the same offense. They're going to utilize players, or they're going to utilize him in a similar fashion. Obviously not going to get the same production as a David Johnson, not on the same level. But he's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. He did run. He did catch. I think you're going to see some production out of him. And at this point, you lost David Johnson. You got to get desperate. Kerwin Williams is an option.
I think he's your best option in that offense. He's your best option.
In that offense, he's your best option. So if you're going to have to pick somebody from Arizona, you have to go with Williams.
All right, Justin, the little guy woke up, so I'm going to have you go ahead and finish through the tight ends, and maybe even hit up a defense if you can't. If you feel like there's a defense to hit up, kind of go over some, and I'll be right back in a couple minutes.
In getting into the tight end perspective, I want to start with those who you should go after. Number one, Austin Hooper, currently owned in 36% of leagues. Yes, Hooper did only have 2 catches, but both of them were for 40-plus yards. Atlanta had a little bit of a struggle in getting the ball moving downfield against the Bears. Did not run well. I think got out of their own game scheme, which is why I think Austin Hooper was not as involved, but still had kind of a Tyreek Hill kind of a day. 2 catches, over 120 yards. I think you will continue to see Hooper involved. Last year, over 10 touchdowns were scored by the tight end position there at Atlanta, and Hooper is the number 1 tight end at Atlanta. So you're going to look to see more production from him throughout the year. The other one, as much as I don't like saying Charles Clay is someone to pick up on a waiver wires, he's currently only owned in 7% of leagues. There's no one to throw to in Buffalo. Yes, Matthews is there. Zay Jones, I think, is the deep threat. But really, those are the only other 2 receivers that are worth anything on a roster, even remotely. And so I think Clay will get targeted in the red zone. He'll get some catches. I think he's valued because of the lack of depth at the wide receiver position for Buffalo. One tight end to avoid. I think you need to avoid as much discipline as it's going to take to avoid him. The number 1 tight end last week or this week was Jesse James, who's currently only owned in 6% of leagues. And we talked about him a lot last year as a waiver wire stream late in the season. So why are we not talking about him now? The reason is because the likelihood of him scoring next week, let alone having another double-digit scoring performance, is highly unlikely. In the last 2 seasons that Jesse James has played, he has only scored double digits fantasy-wise twice. So you're really not looking at another big boom from Jesse James. You didn't draft him unless you see it a couple of times. Roethlisberger is not really known to rely on his tight ends heavily. As you saw in the game against the Browns, he went to Brown often. He did not target Martavis Bryant a lot. I think you'll see Bryant emerge and Jesse James go back to being a 1 to 4 target a game kind of guy. He will get some red zone looks, but not someone you're going to want to rely on from a tight end perspective. And so those are the tight ends from the perspective of those who you should look to grab and those whom you should look to avoid. Now, when we get into a defense, let me pull up here really quick. The number 1 defenses this last week were the Rams, who played the Colts. And we've talked about how basically stream anybody playing the Colts or the Browns. So that would be your Arizona Cardinals. And then the Browns this week, let me pull it up here really fast. The Browns play Baltimore, who had a very, very good game against Cincinnati, but is probably already taken in most of your leagues, so probably not another streamer. Someone else to look at is whoever plays the Jets, which is the Oakland Raiders, who had a fairly decent game against Marcus Mariota. Mariota did have 250 yards passing and 1 rushing touchdown, no passing touchdowns. And so look for Oakland to do well against New York just because New York is going to continue to struggle. Oakland shut down the running game, which is all the Jets really have right now. So look to stream possibly the Oakland Raiders as another streaming option this week. And so based off of time, that is our show. We want to thank you guys for joining the show today. We want to give a shout out to one of our main sponsors in Vox, DFS Firelines, who is a DFS line producer. You can subscribe to them for $50. Tell them that Skull King sent you. They'll treat you guys the best and give you guys money-winning lines in multiple sports across Daily Fantasy Avenue. So we want to thank you for joining the show today.
And don't forget, I'm also one of their line writers for NFL. So
Ryan is also a line writer, and we will get into some previewed matchups of this next week's games in tomorrow's episode, which will be available on Wednesday morning.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, Justin. Again, my name is Ryan Skolrud, and for Justin, we'd like to say thank you for tuning into the show, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow. Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.